is ready. She's also pregnant, God bless her, and visibly pregnant too. So in the later stages of her pregnancy.
Two witnesses were called today, including a former security officer at the hotel where Diddy is seen on video attacking Ventura brutally. You remember that video back in 2016. The prosecutors played the video.
So from the very start, the first witness brings the jury into that hallway where he said Sean Combs looked at him with a devilish stare and Cassie Ventura had a purple eye.
They used to whisper his name like a legend, a mogul, a kingmaker, the untouchable architect of hip-hop royalty. But yesterday, that myth cracked wide open. Cassie Ventura didn't just take the stand, she detonated it. Her testimony didn't feel like courtroom drama. It felt like a full-blown exposé, the kind that makes headlines tremble. What she revealed wasn't just gossip, it was nuclear. Claims so raw, so devastating, even the most jaded reporters were frozen in shock. This wasn't just the fall of a man, it was the unraveling of a decades-long empire built on silence, secrets, and fear.
Rachel, she had on a brown dress, form-fitting, visibly pregnant, head held high, and did not make any eye contact with the defendant, with Sean Combs. Well, she said that Sean Combs directed everything from what she had on, to the lighting in the room, to how she was supposed to interact with the person that she was having sex with. And again, just to reiterate what is a freak off.
Diddy's smooth, untouchable persona, the king of cool, the face of an empire, cracked in real time. Right there in the courtroom, one by one, Cassie laid out allegations so disturbing, so raw, they didn't just rattle the room, they demolished the myth. The same man who once ran the music industry like a battlefield general now sat frozen, pale-faced, completely speechless as his ex exposed every dark corner of his past. No filters, no hesitation, no mercy. This wasn't just tea, this was a full-blown flood. For years, Diddy didn't just participate in hip-hop, he owned it. He built Bad Boy Records from nothing, turned unknown talent into global icons, and stretched his influence across fashion, vodka, TV, and luxury like a cultural juggernaut. On paper, he was untouchable, the golden blueprint of how to flip street hustle into billion-dollar power. But now, that polished mogul image is being ripped apart, piece by piece. Behind the designer suits and platinum plaques, Cassie's testimony reveals something chilling, a darker mastermind hiding behind the mentor mask. And if even or half of what she's saying turns out to be true, this isn't just a scandal, it's a total rewrite of hip-hop history.
The freak off essentially was something that Cassie said she learned about through Sean Combs about a year into their relationship. He described it as voyeurism, wanting to watch her have sex with someone else. And she said that she did it because she was 22, 21, she was young, she didn't know any better, and that she wanted to please Sean Combs.
While the world was busy handing him magazine covers and red carpet praise, Cassie claims she was living in a nightmare no one saw. And when she finally opened her mouth in that courtroom, the entire room turned ice cold. Imagine this. The man always dressed in designer threads, polished to perfection, with a PR-trained smile and smooth sound bites, suddenly stripped bare by the one person who knew the version the cameras never caught. What she revealed didn't match the public Diddy, the industry icon, the cultural giant. No. What she described sounded like a total stranger. Day 2 in court, Diddy walked in like the showman he's always been. Billionaire vibes, powerhouse, attorneys in tow, nodding confidently like he still ran the room. His suit was crisp, his swagger intact, his smirk still working overtime for the cameras. But the second Cassie started talking again, that energy flipped like a switch. The witnesses said it was Hangzhou instant. That famous Diddy confidence? Gone. That mogul mask cracking right there in front of everyone. Within 30 minutes, he was visibly shaken, squirming, shifting, lips pressed tight, while his legal team scrambled to object, interrupt, deflect. They weren't just doing damage control, they were trying to stop a ticking bomb. And the worst part? Cassie wasn't even close to finished.
Attacking Ventura brutally. You remember that video back in 2016. The prosecutors played the video. The witness testified that Diddy tried to pay him off with a giant wad of cash.
And at some point in time, she actually had said that she looked forward to the freak-offs. Why did Cassie express looking forward to these said freak-offs?
When the prosecution asked her, was there ever a time that you enjoyed the freak-offs? This is when Cassie got choked up and she said, I did, but only because I got to spend one-on-one time with Combs and I really did love him.
And that is speaking to the psychological abuse.
You ever see a man lose his empire in real time? That's exactly what it looked like. The same Diddy who once orchestrated careers, sealed million-dollar deals, and moved through the media like a king on a chessboard was now twitching in his seat like he was trapped. He wasn't running the show anymore. Inside that courtroom, he looked like he couldn't stop what was hitting him. Witnesses said he couldn't sit still for a second. The power flipped the second Cassie walked up to that stand. All eyes zeroed in on Diddy, and they say his face turned sheet white, like the soul had drained out of him. He started fumbling with his tie, then his cufflinks, then just sat there wringing his hands like he was trying to hold himself together. One journalist said it was like watching someone unravel under a spotlight, scribbling so frantically, passing notes to his legal team like he was signaling for help. It got so chaotic that one of his lawyers had to physically raise their hand to slow him down. This wasn't the behavior of a man in charge. This was a man watching his empire burn, moment by moment.
To the physical abuse that she potentially experienced as
Yeah,
well.
she's definitely laying out someone who was young, who was influenced by wanting to have this record career. She signed a 10-album deal with Bad Boy Entertainment, led by Sean Combs, and basically describes being enamored by Sean Combs, loving him, not knowing about certain things sexually, and him sort of telling her, teaching her about that. And what you hear is someone that was young.
One reporter described it like this. It was the moment a man finally realized he no longer owns his own story. The legend of Diddy, built over decades, was slipping right through his fingers. And he knew it. Another person inside said he didn't just look shaken. He looked Sean sick, pale, unsteady, like the air had been sucked out of him. But what made it all hit harder? Cassie. She wasn't emotional. She wasn't dramatic. She didn't need to raise her voice or put on a performance. She sat there, calm, collected, and terrifyingly clear. No theatrics, no breakdowns, just truth, delivered with the kind of quiet power that hits like a freight train, and the contrast was brutal. While Diddy spiraled at the defense table, Cassie laid it all out with surgical precision. That silence between her sentences, it screamed louder than any courtroom outburst ever could.
And she even said, you know, I was young, I was naive, I didn't know any better, but she's really telling the story of someone who thought she was going to be with someone in this music industry that was going to help her career, that cared about her, but quickly learned after the freak-offs that wasn't the case. And what I thought was also interesting is she said that after that first freak-off, she said she felt dirty. She didn't want to do it. And when she brought up the idea of having a conversation about the freak-offs in an email, which the jurors saw, she said she backpedaled in the email because Combs responded by saying, I know, you don't want to do it.
One witness even said they caught Diddy closing his eyes more than once, like he couldn't bear to look at Cassie or listen to the words spilling out of her mouth. And believe this, it was just the opening act. As the afternoon dragged on, everyone in that courtroom started to grasp why Diddy was falling apart right before their eyes. What Cassie was about to drop next wasn't just another accusation. It was a bombshell set to shake the entire music world to its core. This wasn't some rumor or a tweak to his carefully crafted image. No, this was the kind of allegation that could bring down the entire empire he'd spent decades building. For a man who spent his life producing hits and spinning stories to his advantage, this was the one narrative he couldn't rewrite, edit, or control. And the worst part? It was unfolding in real time, live for the world to witness.
And she said, oh no, well, it's not that. But that was the beginning. That was in 2010, where she brings up in an email that she wanted to have a conversation about this. And in her words, she didn't want to do it, but she felt like she had to do it.
The moment Cassie stepped up to the stand, time seemed to freeze inside that courtroom. An electric hush fell over everyone present, so heavy you could practically feel the tension pressing down. People held their breath, eyes glued to her, because deep down, they all knew this was the moment everything would change. But even with that anticipation, nobody, not Diddy's elite legal team with all their experience and firepower, was truly ready for the truth Cassie was about to drop. Years of silence, years of bottled up pain and secrets, all came crashing down as Cassie finally took control of the narrative. She wasn't just testifying, she was unleashing a storm that promised to tear apart the carefully polished image Diddy had spent decades building.
On the stand.
I think what made Cassie emotional is having to describe the details of the freak-off and why she did it. When she talked about wanting to do it to please Sean Combs, that's when she broke down. Up until that point, she had just been answering the questions. She's a little soft-spoken at times.
I can tell you that I got a chance to listen to her testimony inside court here behind us, and she was emotional. She broke down into tears at one point when she talked about participating in those freak-offs. She says that she was just 22 years old, had just turned 22 when Combs first proposed to her those drug-fueled sex marathons with escorts.
When Cassie finally spoke, she didn't come out swinging. Instead, she started small, and that made every word hit even harder. She took the courtroom back to the very beginning, the moment she met Diddy at just 19 years old. By then, he was already a heavyweight in the industry, loaded, connected, and wielding serious power. Cassie was a young model chasing her dream of breaking into music, a complete rookie stepping into a world where the power gap was massive from day one. According to her, Diddy knew exactly how to use that imbalance to his advantage. Her story unfolded like a slow-burn thriller. First came the little things, the so-called check-ins that felt anything but innocent. He allegedly demanded to know where she was every second of every day, showing up unannounced when she was out with friends, turning her life into a controlled environment. Then came the career manipulation. She testified that he threatened to bury her music if she didn't fall in line, even sabotaging collaborations with other artists at the slightest hint of competition. This wasn't just control, it was calculated domination.
Apparently telling the security officer that she just wants to leave, and Sean Combs reportedly telling her that she's not going to leave. And when they opened the door to that hotel room, there was another man, according to this officer, sitting in the hotel.
Freedom didn't just disappear overnight. It slipped away piece by piece, like a slow suffocation. Then came the revelation that stunned everyone in the courtroom to silence. According to court transcripts, Cassie testified that Diddy allegedly took control to a terrifying new level by installing tracking software on her phone. He wasn't just watching, he was stalking her every move. She said he'd call within minutes of her arriving somewhere, already armed with the knowledge of her exact location. But the real nightmare, he methodically isolated her from anyone who might help, cutting off friends, collaborators, and even those who once stood by her side. The grip tightened until he was the last person left in her life. The courtroom's tension became unbearable, forcing the judge to step in and call for order 3 times during this intense testimony.
We're going to learn a lot about the nature of Cassie's relationship with Diddy. Some of those details we've seen in prior lawsuits, but to hear her on the stand actually giving those details, reliving those moments herself. Also, you have to remember, she's very pregnant right now.
He was reportedly shaking his head, whispering furiously to his lawyers, making faces the jury could read like an open book. Every time the judge fired off a warning, Diddy'd sit still for maybe 5 minutes before the cycle repeated like clockwork. It was like watching a man used to bending every situation to his will suddenly realized this time he couldn't just shut it down. Then came the moment that flipped the entire courtroom upside down. Cassie pulled out her phone and handed it to her attorney. Boom! Text messages and emails blasted onto the big screen for all to see. Diddy's face? Pure shock. He clearly hadn't a clue she'd saved years' worth of receipts. Messages allegedly showing him apologizing for violent outbursts. Others where he supposedly threatened to destroy her career if she ever spoke up. These weren't vague hints or empty threats. They were hard, direct hits that completely contradicted everything his legal team had spun to the public. And that was just the warm-up. As Cassie pressed on, her testimony took a turn, even darker, pulling the courtroom deeper into the storm.
On the stand.
I think what made Cassie emotional is having to describe the details of the freak-off and why she did it. When she talked about wanting to do it to please Sean Combs, that's when she broke down. Up until that point, she had just been answering the questions. She's a little soft-spoken at times.
She started dropping claims of physical abuse that sent shockwaves through the courtroom, freezing everyone in their seats so hard you could hear a pin drop. With chilling calm, she described being slammed against walls during fights, each word painting a picture darker than the last. Then came the bombshell that stunned the entire room. Cassie testified that Diddy once shoved her down a flight of stairs at a Miami rental house, but it didn't end there. She revealed that on multiple occasions, he allegedly choked her to the brink of unconsciousness, only letting go when her body went completely limp. The courtroom held its breath, caught in the gravity of those words, raw, unfiltered, and impossible to ignore.
When she had to answer the question about if she enjoyed it, that's when she broke down, because she said, I enjoyed being with Sean Combs. And she says, I did it because it made him happy.
What did the expressions of the jurors look like?
The jurors are laser focused on what Cassie has to say. And that's to be expected, right? Because she is the person who will likely be on the stand, according to attorneys, for 2, maybe 3 days. She's the one that was in the relationship with Sean Combs for over 10 years. So she's got a lot to say, and she's just getting started.
The atmosphere in the courtroom shifted instantly. People visibly recoiled as the weight of Cassie's testimony sank in. An older juror dabbed at tears she couldn't hide, while a male juror's gaze dropped, unable to meet Diddy's eyes. Even the most hardened reporters, veterans of countless trials, admitted they were unprepared for the raw intensity of what Cassie was about to reveal. And this was only the calm before the storm, the lead up to the Four Seasons hotel incident that would shatter everything. I thought I was going to die that night, Cassie whispered, her voice so quiet the courtroom had to lean in just to catch each word. What she was about to share wasn't just another scandal. It was a secret buried for years, unheard by the media, the blogs, and even the most loyal fans. For years, Cassie carried this darkness alone, silenced by fear for her safety, her career, and the daunting power of the man she was accusing. But now, that silence was over.
I think it really connects the dots, Rachel. When you look at that initial indictment and what's being alleged, she really is the person that has probably the most information about this idea that the prosecution says, which is creating a criminal enterprise for Sean Combs' sexual desires. Something else that the jurors saw today that sort of connects it back to this alleged criminal enterprise are 7 photos of people that were very close to Sean Combs, one even his former chief of staff.
What began as a typical night at an industry after-party quickly spiraled into something darker and far more terrifying. Cassie recounted the moment everything changed. The second Diddy's smile vanished when he caught sight of her chatting with another music executive. That charm gone in an instant, replaced by a grip so tight on her arm it left bruises that would tell their own story later. But he didn't just stop there. With a poisonous whisper meant only for her ears, he dropped threats laced with danger, all while keeping up that flawless, untouchable public face for everyone else around them. Then, just when the tension seemed unbearable, Cassie revealed the part that left the courtroom utterly silent. She testified that Diddy dragged her, yes, dragged her, across the bustling hotel lobby, tears streaming down her face, struggling to break free. The chaos caught the attention of hotel security, but when they stepped in and saw who it was, their response was chillingly dismissive. "Is everything okay?" one guard asked Diddy before walking away, ignoring Cassie's obvious distress. "No one even asked if I was okay," she said quietly but firmly. Then, in a move that silenced the room, Cassie's lawyers revealed what she had kept hidden. Photos taken the very next morning, bruises blooming on her arms, a busted lip, red marks trailing her neck. Raw, shaky mirror selfies with no airbrushing or staging. Those images weren't just pictures. They were proof. Proof she knew she would one day need when the world was ready to hear the truth.
And these were all people that Cassie Ventura was able to name and explain the functions in terms of what they did: security, driver, chief of staff, someone that handled financials. So it's showing that she knew some of these people, again, because she was with him, around him for so long.
Where he could ejaculate, everything she said was controlled by him. And mind you, Brian, his children, 6 children, are in the courtroom at this point listening to all of this. And the jury...
The courtroom atmosphere shifted instantly the moment those photos appeared on the big screen. Diddy's legal team went into overdrive, throwing out every objection in the book, claiming the images were unverified, unrelated, and too late to be introduced as evidence. But the judge wasn't having any of it. She overruled every single objection, forcing the photos into the spotlight where the entire courtroom could see them. The reaction was immediate and intense. One juror gasped, covering her mouth in disbelief. Others looked away, unable to confront the raw reality laid bare before them. In the back row, another juror's hand trembled as she furiously took notes, the weight of what she was witnessing sinking in. This wasn't just another scandal. This was a bombshell that blindsided everyone in that room. What made it worse? None of this had ever been mentioned before in any court filings or statements. Diddy's defense team was caught completely off guard, scrambling, panicking, losing control. And just when it seemed the tension couldn't get any thicker, Cassie dropped a detail that sent shockwaves through the room. She said Diddy had hurled a champagne bottle at her head, missing by mere inches and smashing into the wall behind her. But the violence didn't stop there. She described a terrifying meltdown: smashed lamps, overturned furniture, and a fist punching a hole right through the bathroom door. The darkest part came last. She said Diddy kept her trapped inside that hotel room for over 48 hours, snatched her phone, and threatened severe consequences if she reached out for help. When her testimony ended, all eyes locked on Diddy, hungry for his reaction. But what happened next stunned everyone.
You know, there was a moment early on when Cassie mentioned Dallas Austin, who she called a friend who's a producer. So I don't know if that's someone that we're going to hear from. We know that there were pictures shown to prospective jurors that are well-known celebrities, you know, Kanye West, Kid Cudi, Lauren London. We don't know, though, how they fit yet into why they were even asked, do you know these people are...
That moment will go down as the defining image not only of this trial, but of Sean Diddy Combs' entire legacy. The mogul, media king, and man who built his empire on being unshakably cool under pressure, completely lost his composure right in front of everyone, his polished businessman mask crumbling to reveal chaos underneath. A man who spent years building a brand where he was always the boss, and in control now visibly unraveling as Cassie's testimony landed one gut punch after another. Court reporters, who've covered hundreds of high-profile cases, said they'd never seen anything like it as Diddy physically shrank into his chair, no longer the confident giant who walked in that morning, while his legal team scrambled desperately to contain the damage, with his lead attorney repeatedly trying to calm him, even sliding him a bold note, reading "Stay calm." That clearly didn't help. The tension boiled over when Cassie brought up an alleged incident at his Hampton house, causing Diddy to slam his hand on the table so hard the sound echoed like a gunshot, forcing the judge to halt proceedings and warn him sternly that if he couldn't control himself, he'd be removed from the courtroom, a moment that nearly saw him thrown out of his own trial. Throughout the testimony, Diddy kept shaking his head and mouthing denials, but seemed to forget the jury was watching every move, revealing a man who had never been called out before, suddenly realizing he had no control over the room. Years of allegedly controlling every part of Cassie's life shattered as she held the mic, and he couldn't silence her. No press release or security guard able to mute her, forced to sit powerless as she revealed how he threatened her, that if she spoke out, he'd come after her family, leaving the courtroom in stunned silence at the gravity of those words.
So the prosecution is questioning Cassie right now, still questioning her.
The defense hasn't even got a chance to, I mean, that might change based on the timing, but because she's such a key witness, it's likely that she will be on that stand the rest of the day.
Then came the moment that blew the courtroom wide open as Cassie's lawyer revealed they had actual recordings, real audio of Diddy's voice making those alleged threats. And the second that tape played, Diddy completely lost it, jumping up out of his chair, pointing directly at Cassie, shouting, "You know, that's not how it happened," only to be physically pulled back down by 3 of his own lawyers amid stunned silence from everyone watching, the courtroom witnessing a full public unraveling of the man once thought untouchable, forcing the judge to call an immediate recess, but the damage was already done, with every single person from the jury to the press seeing the mogul's cool, confident mask shattered to reveal someone totally unglued and vulnerable. Just when it seemed the shockwaves might subside, Cassie dropped yet another bombshell, revealing evidence far beyond photos or texts. The kind of receipts nobody saw coming, with years of secret collection and backup of emails, messages, and photos that Diddy couldn't reach. But the real game changer came when she disclosed messages from big-name celebrities allegedly witnessing Diddy's behavior firsthand. People from his inner circle, longtime friends, collaborators, and tour mates who had seen what the public never did. And the moment Cassie named those sources, Diddy reportedly turned ghost white, looking as if he might be sick, while his lawyers scrambled to object, demanding a sidebar, claiming hearsay and improper submission of the texts, trying every tactic to block their entry. But the judge stood firm, reviewing the evidence privately before overruling all objections, deeming the messages highly relevant and allowing them into the case, sealing yet another devastating blow to Diddy's defense.
What are you learning about the nicknames that were used between Cassie and Sean?
Yeah, we learned that Cassie referred to him as Pop Pop and Sean Combs would refer to her as CC. The prosecution says, what does CC stand for? She said Cassie Combs.
What kind of witness is Cassie coming off as to the jurors?
I think naturally when you look at her visually, people see that she's pregnant and looking like she's due any day now. So they might, have empathy, sympathy for her in that way, but we don't really know. We know that they've been instructed to be fair and impartial. As to what type of witness she's coming off as, she's describing someone that she was.
It hit Diddy like a knockout punch as he dropped his head into his hands, fully aware of what was coming next. One by one, those explosive celebrity messages lit up the courtroom screens. A major rapper texting Cassie after a Grammy after-party saying, "You okay? What I saw tonight wasn't right. You can stay at my place if you need to." Followed by a female pop star confessing, "I've known him 15 years. I've never seen him act like that with anyone else. This isn't normal. Please call me." But the most damning was a long-time producer who'd worked with Diddy for decades, sending a chilling message after witnessing something in the studio. "I can't be around this anymore. I told him to get help. Call me when you're safe." These texts utterly shattered the flawless public image Diddy had worked so hard to protect. His narrative that it's all just drama, crumbling under the weight of testimony from people who actually knew him and were genuinely concerned. And then, as if that wasn't enough, his own messages surfaced, screenshots showing Diddy texting Cassie things like, "I'm sorry about last night. You know how I get when I drink. It won't happen again." That was followed by offers that sounded like bribes. "Whatever you need to make this right, just name it. New car, new apartment, whatever you want." And finally, the ones that screamed hush money. "My lawyer can draw up the paperwork tomorrow. $2 million clean break. You don't talk about anything from the past 5 years." All of which tore apart the carefully crafted myth of the untouchable mogul and plunged the courtroom deeper into disbelief.
Someone, she said, that was trying to figure out who she was at that time and who she was allowed to be. Now you're looking at somebody that's almost 40 years old, totally different person, but even in describing what was going on at her at that time, taking drugs, trying to please Sean Combs, she's really just sort of laying out the case for her not having a lot of control. So I think that's the takeaway. This is someone who is making it very clear that at that particular time in her life, she says she did not have any control really over what she wore, what she did, who she was having sex with. She's a different person now. But I think when she talks about those details and even reflecting on them for herself, as we saw today.
The courtroom was gripped in stunned silence as those messages played out. Everyone watching Diddy's world unravel in real time. Even his own entourage, once so solid, quietly slipped away one by one, unable to face the fallout. By the time Cassie finished, Diddy was left almost alone, stripped of his usual power and support, with the surprise evidence, texts, photos, recordings, shattering the carefully built image he'd spent years cultivating. This wasn't just testimony. It was a seismic shift, rewriting the story of a man once seen as untouchable. Now, the question on everyone's mind isn't just about the trial's outcome, but whether Diddy's entire empire can withstand the storm. For more explosive updates on this story and all the latest celebrity scandals, subscribe to Adam Gossip, your go-to source for the hottest gossip around. The courtroom was gripped in stunned silence as those messages played out.
With what she was wearing, she said she would buy outfits from sex shops and see which one he wanted her to wear. And then inside the actual hotel rooms, their apartments where the freak-offs took place, she said that Combs was in charge of lighting. It began.
What's up? Just a little space, please. All right, sir. Just a little space. Good evening, guys.
What is a freak-off? The freak-off essentially was something that Cassie said she learned about through Sean Combs about a year into their relationship.
According to sources at the courthouse, Diddy's family showed up determined this morning, but his twin daughters, Jessie and Delilah, left looking downcast, barely saying a word. His mom, Janice, and sons King and Justin were there too. No smiles, just serious faces. Something heavy is clearly going on behind the scenes.
Hey man, Sean, man, be good, bro. Okay.
According to insiders, day 2 of Diddy's trial just wrapped up, and while the prosecutors came in strong, it wasn't a complete knockout. But by the end of the day, something major went down, something that could completely change the game. The stakes just got higher, and nobody's walking out of that courtroom the same.
So from the very start, the first witness brings the jury into that hallway where he said Sean Combs looked at him with a devilish stare and Cassie Ventura had a purple eye.
Cassie, Diddy's ex, dropped some serious bombshells in court. She revealed he threatened her with the release of so-called freak-off videos, private, graphic footage involving her and others. She said he used those videos to scare her and keep control, turning what should have been a relationship into a nightmare. This testimony just turned up the heat in the trial.
Rachel, she had on a brown dress, form-fitting, visibly pregnant, head held high, and did not make any eye contact with the defendant, with Sean Combs. Today in court, we're seeing a lot of text messages back and forth from Cassie Ventura and Sean Combs. We're seeing some pictures of her from when she was allegedly assaulted by Sean Combs.
She opens up about the story behind the 2016 video that's been circulating, showing Sean Combs allegedly assaulting Cassie. What's shocking is what happened right after. Cassie said she went straight to the home of one of Sean's close employers, a man named Drock, someone she said she was friendly with. It wasn't just a quick visit. His wife was there too, adding an unexpected twist to the whole situation. This part of her testimony shines new light on what really went down behind closed doors, revealing connections and moments no one had heard before.
And she tells the stories and gives context to that 2016 video that we've seen where Sean Combs is assaulting Cassie. And what she said is, after that happened, she went to one of Sean Combs' employers' homes named D-Rock, who she said she was friendly with, he and the wife.
But here's the twist. Despite everything that happened that night, she still went back to Sean Combs' house. Why? Because she had a fitting for the Perfect Match premiere, an event she couldn't afford to miss. Imagine that, walking back into the lion's den, balancing pain and pressure while the cameras were already rolling. It's the kind of messy, high-stakes drama that makes this whole trial feel like a real-life soap opera. The line between her personal nightmare and the glitz of Hollywood was razor thin.
But she said that same night she did end up going back to Sean Combs' house because she had a fitting for the Perfect Match. There was a premiere coming up.
Then the red carpet photos surfaced. Cassie standing next to Sean Combs, flashing a smile like everything was fine. But here's the kicker. She points out if you really look close, there are subtle bruises, Tiny but telling marks of the storm raging beneath that glamorous facade. The real jaw-dropper? The raw, brutal selfie she took of her busted lip. No. Filters? No hiding. That black eye? It never hit the public eye, locked away in private snaps that speak louder than any headline. It's the kind of hidden pain behind the spotlight that nobody wants to admit. But now it's out in the open.
And then we saw pictures of her on that red carpet with Sean Combs, and she sort of explains, if you look closely, you can see a little bit of bruising, but we saw that there was an image she took where she had a busted lip. We never saw the black eye because those pictures that she took of herself.
Cassie didn't hold back. She admitted she was forced to cover up the bruises, using makeup as her secret weapon to hide the truth from the world. Every layer of concealer was a silent scream, masking the pain no one was supposed to see. It wasn't just about looking good. It was about surviving in a world that didn't want to face the reality behind the glamour. Now, with that 2016 video and these haunting photos, the full raw story is finally coming to light, showing us exactly what happened that night. No filter, no lies.
She said she wanted to cover it up, but she explains how she used makeup, how she had to hide the bruising and things of that nature. So we got a little bit of context from that 2016 video and also some pictures to accompany what she said happened that night.
Imagine this. Cassie and her closest friend, both barely out of their teens, caught in a snapshot full of laughter and dreams, totally unaware of the drama that would later unfold. Fast forward to 2016, and that same friend couldn't stay silent anymore. She saw Cassie with a busted lip and a black eye, clear signs that something was seriously wrong. Knowing Sean Combs' reputation and all the behind-the-scenes chaos, she didn't hesitate. She called the police. Because let's be real, when a guy's got a public image bigger than his patience, you know the trouble's real. This wasn't just a phone call. It was the moment someone finally called out the king of swagger for the nightmare he'd been hiding behind the spotlight.
The prosecution showed a picture of Cassie and a very close friend of hers when they were 19 or 20 years old. So now you fast forward to 2016, that same woman is the one that Cassie said called the police because she was so irate about the fact that she saw her friend with this busted lip with a black eye, and she says her friend knew automatically based on other alleged incidents that had happened that this was because of Sean Combs.
Even when the police showed up at Cassie's house, ready to dig deeper, things didn't get any easier. They asked her a few questions, pressing for details, but when it came to the crucial moment, who did this to you? Cassie stayed silent. She wouldn't name names. And just like that, the police packed up and left, walking away from the mess like it wasn't their problem. Sometimes even those meant to protect don't want to step into the chaos lurking behind closed doors.
So the police came to her house, according to Cassie. They asked her a few questions, but the police said, well, who is the person that did this to you? She wouldn't answer, and she said they left.
According to court observers, Combs appeared highly attentive, carefully watching the jurors throughout the testimony. At the same time, he shook his head in clear denial when Cassie claimed that he frequently offered her drugs. This moment underscored the tension in the courtroom, as the allegations shifted from physical abuse to a more complex, darker narrative.
Understood. Now, how did Diddy react while Cassie was on the stand? I know yesterday you said he was listening very intently, so is that the same case?
Yeah, more of the same. We see Combs listening very carefully. He's looking at the jurors. He's also, though, again, sort of shaking his head in defiance when Cassie brings up the idea of drugs being offered to her all the time from Combs.
According to court insiders, Cassie dropped a bombshell revealing her on and off battle with opiate addiction, giving everyone a raw look behind the curtain of those alleged freak-off videos. This wasn't just about controlling videos. It was about a woman fighting her own demons while tangled up in a toxic web around Combs. Sources close to the case say her addiction added a whole new messy layer to the drama no one saw coming.
Or people who associated with Combs. One thing that I thought was interesting today is that Cassie today in court said that she had an on and off again addiction to opiates. So this was her sort of giving us an inkling into what she was going through, not just with the alleged freak-offs, but her own struggles with addiction.
Even amid the chaos, a flood of text messages from 2010, 2013, and 2017 surfaced in court, revealing a roller coaster of emotions. Cassie wished Combs a heartfelt Happy Father's Day, saying, "I can't wait till we have a baby of our own," like everything was sunshine and roses. But fast forward to 2017 and the tone flipped hard. She admitted, "Nothing good comes out of freak-offs," and threw a savage jab saying, "You treat me like you're Ike Turner," Considering Ike Turner's brutal history, that's a heavy accusation. Kind of ironic for a man who's been playing the good guy in the spotlight while allegedly hiding a darker side behind the scenes.
Yeah, so a lot of text messages were shown from 2010, 2013, 2017. Essentially, there were text messages where she wishes him a happy Father's Day and says, "I can't wait till we have a baby of our own." So there was a text message shared from 2017 where she said, "Nothing good comes out of freak-offs." And then she says, "You treat me like you're Ike Turner." Ike Turner, as we know, had a volatile relationship with Tina Turner, and that was a nod to the abuse that she says she suffered.
Even Cassie said she used drugs to numb the pain because those freak-offs weren't just random, they were relentless. Hitting so often her life became a never-ending nightmare. She laid bare the brutal truth about battling urinary tract infections so stubborn that even antibiotics threw in the towel. And get this, there were times she had sex while fighting those infections, only to get blindsided by a freak-off mid-act. Her blunt advice? I don't recommend it. Meanwhile, Diddy was probably busy playing Mr. Smooth in public, flexing that billionaire lifestyle, all while his private life was anything but glamorous. The contrast couldn't be starker. Glam on the outside, chaos on the inside.
She said she used the drugs to numb herself because these freak-offs, again, were happening so regularly. She also talked about having urinary tract infections all the time, and that it was so bad, she said, that even the antibiotics that she used didn't even work anymore. She said there were times where she would have sex and have these freak-offs while she had the infection. And then she said, quote, "I don't recommend it."
Right from the start of the trial, prosecutors made it clear to the jurors that they'd be seeing two disturbing videos, one with Cassie Ventura and another involving someone else caught up in these alleged freak-offs. Cassie opened up about the shame and fear those videos brought her, revealing how terrified she was of what would happen if they leaked. She asked herself, how do I even explain this to my mom? It wasn't just about protecting her image. It was about shielding her family from the fallout of a nightmare nobody should have to live through.
Early on in this trial, the prosecutors told the jurors that they were going to see two videos of not only Cassie Ventura, but of someone else in these alleged freak-offs. So when you talk about video, according to Cassie, she was embarrassed by it. She even talked about, what would I tell my mom if something like this got out? She was saying she would be hurt for her family.
Cassie made it clear she never wanted any of this to come out, even though she admits she went along with Sean Combs' demands just to keep the relationship afloat. She said she did these things because he insisted, and because she wanted to keep him happy, no matter the cost to herself. Meanwhile, Diddy was probably out there playing the flawless billionaire charmer, flashing smiles and dodging accountability, all while dragging Cassie through a nightmare only he created. The gap between his public image and private reality? Absolutely scandalous.
So she did not want this to get out, even though she said she was partaking in all of these things in an effort to keep her relationship going with Sean Combs. She says she did these things because he wanted to do them and she wanted to make him happy.
Today in court, things took an even juicier turn when prosecutors unveiled text messages where Cassie appeared to be looking forward to a freak-off, even typing things like, "LOL, I can't wait." On the surface, it sounded like she was down for it, but when pressed by the prosecution, Cassie revealed the chilling truth behind those words. She said it wasn't excitement, it was fear. Fear of Sean Combs and the consequences of pushing back. She was trapped in a toxic cycle, willing to say anything just to keep the fragile thread of their relationship intact. It's a stark reminder of how manipulation can twist even the simplest messages into tools of control, proving once again that behind Diddy's glossy public image lies a much darker, disturbing reality.
But something else happened today in court that was worth noting in reference to those text messages. There were messages where she seemingly wants to have a freak-off, says things like, "LOL, I can't wait." The prosecution asked her, why would you say that if you didn't really want to do it? And she explained that she said those things because she was fearful of Combs and because she wanted to keep the relationship going.
The hotel surveillance video is shaping up to be the linchpin of this entire trial. It keeps popping up like the smoking gun everyone's waiting for. Discussed yesterday, dissected today, and likely to dominate the courtroom drama ahead. This footage could make or break the case because, without it, much of Cassie's allegations of sexual and physical abuse by Sean Combs, first brought to light in her 2023 civil lawsuit, would rely heavily on testimony alone. The video promises to deliver undeniable proof that could finally expose the harsh reality lurking behind Diddy's carefully crafted image, turning whispers into cold, hard evidence that no one can ignore.
Is that hotel surveillance video going to be for this entire case?
I think we keep seeing that surveillance video show up in this trial. So they talked about it yesterday. We talked about it today. It is the centerpiece, if you will, because without that video, we know that early when she said that she had been abused sexually and physically by Sean Combs, when she filed that civil lawsuit in 2023.
According to court reporters before the hotel surveillance video surfaced, Combs consistently denied any allegations of abuse. This video has become a critical piece of evidence, with prosecutors emphasizing it as just one example in a series of incidents that Cassie claims occurred, but were never captured on camera. The footage is viewed as a turning point in the trial, aiming to challenge Combs' denials and reveal the broader pattern of abuse that the prosecution is building its case around.
Before that video came out, we know Combs denied having abused her. So that's why I think this video is so crucial, and the prosecution is saying this is just one example, and they're using the testimony of Cassie saying that not only did it happen this time, but there were a lot of things that she claims happened that were not on camera.
According to court insiders, when someone faces life in prison, the defense has to come out swinging hard during cross-examination to poke holes in the witness's story. So far, the defense hasn't spoken, but Cassie is expected to stay on the stand for the rest of the day, and maybe tomorrow before they get their turn. The defense seems set to push the narrative they hinted at in opening statements, that this was just a toxic, messy relationship. They'll argue that Sean Combs might be a jerk or have questionable behavior, but that doesn't mean he's a criminal or abuser. They want the jury to see this as a personal dispute blown out of proportion. This puts the jury in a tough spot, deciding whether the abuse claims hold up beyond a reasonable doubt, or if it's just a bitter breakup with accusations. Ultimately, the jury will have to weigh the evidence and decide if Sean is guilty or just a flawed guy in a complicated relationship. The courtroom drama is far from over.
When you're talking about somebody who's facing up to life in prison, they have to go hard on her cross-examination to poke holes in what she's saying. We have not heard from the defense yet. We expect Cassie will be on the stand the rest of the day, possibly even a little bit of tomorrow before we get to cross-examination. But we imagine the defense will stick to what they sort of hinted to at the opening of this trial, which is that this was a toxic relationship. Is Combs a good guy? Maybe he's a jerk at times. You don't agree with his sex life, but does that mean that he committed a crime? That's going to be something the jury will have to answer.
According to court reports, as this high-stakes trial progresses, the defense is expected to maintain a steady, aggressive line of questioning designed to undermine Cassie Ventura's testimony and reframe the narrative entirely. They seem set on portraying the situation as a deeply dysfunctional, volatile relationship rather than a criminal case. The defense will likely argue that while Sean Combs may have his flaws, a temper here, questionable personal choices there, none of these behaviors rise to the level of criminal abuse. They want the jury to see this as messy, but not illegal. However, the prosecution is working hard to counter this narrative with a detailed, compelling portrait of control and manipulation that went far beyond typical relationship problems. Cassie's testimony has been consistent and powerful, painting a picture of someone who was systematically controlled, intimidated, and exploited, not just by Sean, but by the circle of people enabling him. According to court observers, Cassie repeatedly emphasized how she lost control over her own life, how every decision was monitored or influenced by Sean and his associates, creating a toxic environment where fear and coercion were the norm. This isn't simply a story of a bad breakup or personal issues, it's an allegation of abuse with serious legal ramifications. The prosecution is piecing together evidence that includes text messages, videos, witness accounts, and physical evidence that point to a disturbing pattern of abuse and manipulation. The jury now faces the difficult job of sifting through conflicting testimonies, emotional appeals, and complex legal arguments to determine if these actions constitute criminal behavior or simply unfortunate personal turmoil. The tension inside the courtroom is palpable, as every piece of evidence and every witness statement could sway the verdict. One wrong move could mean life imprisonment for Sean Combs, while a verdict of not guilty could tarnish Cassie's credibility and leave questions about justice unanswered. This trial is a high-wire act of legal strategy, emotional storytelling, and intense scrutiny, and as the case unfolds, the world watches closely to see how justice will ultimately be served. The coming days promise even more gripping drama, as the defense prepares to challenge the prosecution's case, and Cassie faces the pressure of cross-examination. The outcome remains uncertain, but one thing is clear: this trial is far from over, and the stakes couldn't be higher.
But I think we will see more of the same in terms of that type of questioning or those types of questions being posed as to was this a criminal enterprise and should this person be facing those types of charges. But I also believe that with so many times Ventura mentioning that she was not in control and that he was in control, and the people around him that were helping to sort of facilitate that.
Even as the trial intensifies, prosecutors argue that Sean Combs' actions weren't just isolated incidents, but part of a criminal enterprise fueled by his sexual desires. They claim he had a network of people helping to enable and cover up the abuse, creating a pattern of control and exploitation, especially over Cassie Ventura. This shifts the case from a messy relationship to serious criminal conduct. The defense, however, aims to paint it as a toxic but non-criminal relationship. With Sean facing potentially life in prison, the jury's decision will be crucial in deciding between these competing narratives.
I think that's where you're hearing right now the argument on the side of the prosecution as it pertains to a criminal enterprise for Sean Combs' sexual desires.
A lot of people might be squirming hearing all these juicy, messy details about someone's sex life laid bare in court. Stuff most folks wouldn't even dare whisper about at a dinner party. But for the prosecution and Cassie Ventura, these scandalous moments aren't just gossip. They're the backbone of a serious abuse case. They're painting a picture of years filled with physical bruises, emotional scars, and wild sexual drama that Diddy apparently thought he could just brush off like another day at the office. Meanwhile, Diddy's probably sitting there looking like he just got caught sneaking snacks from the fridge, trying to play it cool but clearly sweating under that calm exterior. He's giving those classic I didn't do it vibes, but with every juicy detail dropped, that act looks shakier and shakier. The courtroom is buzzing, and the jury has front row seats to this roller coaster of power, pain, and control. You can almost hear the whispers. How did he think he could get away with this? Now, it's all about watching how this explosive saga unfolds, and whether Diddy's smooth-talking charm can survive the heat of these serious, explosive allegations. The real question is, will the jury buy Diddy's story or see through the act and hold him accountable? This trial just keeps heating up, and every new piece of evidence feels like another punch to his defense.
I think a lot of people are not used to hearing the details of someone's sex life in this way, and they are so salacious, but to the prosecution and to Cassie Ventura, they're important in her story. So I think that's what's happening. They're laying out years of what they're calling abuse, physically, emotionally, sexually, and we'll see, what happens from there.
Even reporters covering the trial noted the tense atmosphere in the courtroom, especially during moments when the prosecution presented those painful images of Cassie with the deep cut above her eyebrow. They observed Cassie's husband and brother visibly glaring at the Combs family, clearly affected by the raw emotions unfolding. The prosecutors also revealed 13 photographs showing different men, mostly Black, who were allegedly involved in the so-called freak-offs with Combs and Ventura. According to Cassie's testimony, these images painted a disturbing pattern of ongoing abuse, not just isolated incidents. Observers described the courtroom as charged with a heavy energy, as if the evidence was exposing a darker, deeper side to the case that no one could ignore.
Sitting behind Cassie Ventura's husband, he's sort of right behind me, and I kind of can see his face, and I can tell you right now, I can see him and Cassie's brother sort of glaring at the Combs family, looking at Combs when they are showing those images of Cassie with the deep cut in her eyebrow. When they were showing the 13 pictures of men, different races, predominantly Black men, who had the freak-offs with Combs and Ventura, according to Ventura.
Cassie Ventura was able to clearly identify several of the men involved. She didn't just remember faces. She recalled the exact locations where these disturbing incidents took place. Some of them, she said, occurred more than once, almost like they were part of a sick routine. There were a couple of people whose names she couldn't remember, but their faces were burned into her memory. In court today, the jury watched as Cassie confidently pointed out 13 men she recognized, all of whom she claimed